All right, moving on to 6.1b, small intestine and enzymes. So I said before we're kind of going to jump around a little bit. So we're talking about understanding number 1, the contraction of circular and longitudinal muscles in the small intestines, but it's not just the small intestines, right? We're talking about peristalsis. So, peristalsis is a wave of muscle contractions that pushes food through the gut and it mixes it with enzymes. Now, this process actually starts up at the base of your mouth into your esophagus. Your esophagus is really the first place that peristalsis starts. And you can see that there's 2 points of contraction and relaxation. And the lump of food, we call it a bolus. I don't know why, we just do. So when you chew food in your mouth, you chew it all up and you swallow it, it becomes a bolus. And instead of this being the intestine, we're going to pretend that this is your esophagus for a minute. And you can kind of like, if you think about when you swallow something that's too big, how it feels, this is exactly what's happening. So you have behind the bolus, you have muscles contracting, right, which push the food down. And in front of the bolus, the muscles have to relax so that that bolus can come through. Now, there's 2 different types of contraction. There's both longitudinal and circular contractions, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You can think of this as like if you got a sock. Oh, you could do it with a sock. So if you take one sock and you ball it up and you put it inside a long tube sock and then try and push it through. Another thing to do is like this is kind of like squeezing toothpaste, right? So you squeeze from the back and it pushes the toothpaste forward. So here we go. Circular muscles contract to prevent the food from moving backwards, right? Like other than vomiting, you really don't want food coming up and out. You want it to go down. So you have circular muscles that contract, they constrict right here, and that prevents food from moving backwards. Longitudinal muscles contract to push food forward, right? So the circular muscles squeeze and pinch off this tube so that the food can't go backwards. And then your longitudinal muscles, right? They contract to push the food forward. And it's the combination of those 2 things that pushes food forward throughout the GI tract, starting in your esophagus all the way down to the end. That's also why uh, when you start eating, sometimes not long thereafter, you have to go to the bathroom because these waves of muscle contraction, they continue forward. So as they start all the way up in your esophagus, they'll continue down and eventually they'll get all the way down into your intestines, into your large intestines, which is why people tend to poop after they eat. So here we have a visualization to help you with that. So you can see that bolus is being pushed forward through the intestines. And it's a wave action that's pushing. Oh, look at that. It's poop. Right? So you can see the muscles contracting on the back end, pushing it forward. So those circular muscles constrict the tube so that the poop doesn't go backwards. And then those longitudinal muscles are constricting and pushing the poop forward. Okay, we're moving on to understanding number 2. The pancreas secretes enzymes into the lumen of the small intestine. So here we have the liver, here we have the stomach, here we have the pancreas, this big yellow tail looking thing, right? Here's our gallbladder, and here's the duodenum. And the duodenum is really just the connection where everything connects into the small intestine. For now, we're going to focus on the pancreas. So in the digestive system, there's accessory organs that are not necessarily part of the alimentary canal, meaning they're not part of the meat straw, like your liver. Your liver is not really part of the meat straw. It's attached to it, but it's not part of the meat straw. However, these organs are super important because typically they provide chemicals that are necessary for the process. For now, we're going to focus on the pancreas. Pancreas is super, super important. So the pancreas is an accessory organ that secretes enzyme juices, juicy juices, into the small intestine. These digestive enzymes include amylase, lipase, and endopeptidase. Remember, ACE means enzyme. And the name of the enzyme will actually tell you what it breaks down. Like amylase breaks down amylose. And lose, OSE, anything that's OSE, is going to be a carbohydrate. Who remembers this from freshman year and last year, right? Lipase breaks down lipids. Endopeptidase breaks down peptides, right? So don't freak out about chemical names. They give you information, right? So amylase is an enzyme that breaks down amylose. Lipase is an enzyme that breaks down lipids. Endopeptidase is an enzyme that breaks down peptides. These are all produced in the pancreas. So this is why people that have pancreatitis, it's a big deal because you literally need this organ to like survive. It gives you all the chemicals that help you break down your food. Or when people have diabetes, because insulin is also produced by the pancreas, right? When your immune system attacks your pancreas, you end up with type 1 diabetes. Not so great. So, once these enzymes are produced in the pancreas, they're released into a small section of the intestine called the duodenum. Duo meaning two. It connects two things. It connects the pancreas into the intestine. It also connects the liver and a bunch of other stuff, but that's just how I remember it. It's the connection. So remember, this is going back to freshman year and to last year. Enzymes break down macromolecules into monomers, and then it's those monomers, so smaller compounds that can be absorbed into the intestinal wall. And this is done via hydrolysis. Lysis means to break, and hydro means water. So we're going to use water to break stuff. Check it out. Here you have some sort of disaccharide. Di because it's got two monomers, 1, 2, and you can tell by the shape. Look at that. It's a ribose and a glucose. You know how I know that? One has 6 sides and one has 5 sides. Bringing it back to last year. This is sucrose, basically table sugar, right? Now, we're going to add water, and that water is going to, along with some enzymes, break the bond that holds these two monosaccharides together, right? So we're going from a disaccharide to 2 monosaccharides, glucose, and I was wrong. It's not ribose, it's fructose. I was close. It's still 5-sided. So hopefully this is coming back to you. If not, go back in your sketchbook and look at your topic 2 notes, and I can post the juniors right now are starting topic 2, so as I re-record those lectures, I'll post them for you guys too. So this diagram shows us how we break down that disaccharide, di meaning 2 monomers, disaccharide, into 2 monomers, glucose and fructose, using water. So monomers resulting from enzyme digestion are used to synthesize molecules throughout our body. Remember? We eat food, we break down all that food into monomers, and then we reuse those monomers to build whatever it is that we need, right? So proteins break down into amino acids, and then we use those amino acids to build our own proteins. Carbohydrates, we break down complex carbohydrates into monosaccharides, and then we either store energy in them through molecules like glucose, Or if you're a plant, you can build cellulose or structural compounds using those carbohydrates. Fat, we break down into glycerol, the ping pong balls, and fatty acids, the tails, and then we reconstruct them into things like triglycerides or phospholipids to help build cell membranes. So, this is just a big review from last year. Now, you do have to know specific enzymes that are produced and used in digestion. So, these are protease and peptidase. Can you guess what they break down? Protease and peptidase, a polypeptide chain, otherwise known as a protein. Amylase, we already talked about this. Amylase is going to break down amylose, which is a carbohydrate. Nuclease, remember we talked about nucleic enzymes. So nuclease breaks down nucleic enzymes. And lipase, which sounds like lipid, it breaks down lipids. See? All that stuff I just said. Protease and peptidase digest proteins into amino acids. Amylase digests starch and glycogens into simple sugars. Nuclease digests nucleic acids into nucleotides. And lipase is going to digest lipids into fatty acids. Now remember, one thing you should know, cellulose remains undigested. This is why you see your corn in your poop and tomato skins in your poop because it's made out of cellulose, and we don't have the enzymes to break that down. Now, ungulates, clove-hoofed animals like goats and cows, they do. They have the proper enzymes to break down cellulose. They also have multi-chambered stomachs that they spend, well, they don't spend their stomachs, but the food, cellulose, spends extra time in those stomachs breaking down. See what I tell you? Cellulose polymers remain undigested and they're passed through the digestive tract. That's why if you're constipated, they tell you eat more fiber because your body cannot break it down. It acts as a bulking agent to help kind of collect all that random gunk in your colon and your intestines and help push it out. Think of like the threads in celery. Those are the really tough threads. That's cellulose. Lettuce, most of your greens, lots of cruciferous vegetables, they're high in fiber. Just to review at this point, where these are the major structures that we've talked about so far. The liver, which produces bile. We haven't talked a lot about bile, but it helps break down fats. The stomach, the chamber that's very acidic. Those acids kill pathogens, and it's the stomach's job is to physically churn up food and help break it down. Remember, this is not absorption or not breaking down of polymers into monomers. We're talking about just like increasing surface area. You have your pancreas, which is producing those enzymes, which are delivered into the duodenum and into the small intestines. And then in the small intestine is where you have the mixture of these enzymes and the breaking down of those polymers into monomers and the absorption of those monomers. And then you have the large intestine, which is basically going to vacuum out all that water and compact all the waste product into puke, and then you're going to poop it out. So at this point, you should be able to answer these questions. As a rule of thumb, these are fair game for quiz questions. So if I were you, I would make sure you can answer all these questions. All right, we're going to cap this video right here, and we'll see you in a few minutes.